It is on, and I will start this with an introduction. Hello, my name is Sophia. I am a Praxis volunteer here, and today I will be discussing the World Migratory Bird Day, which is for raising the awareness over migratory birds, their flights. And for this year's theme, we have the motto of protect the insects and protect birds. Specifically, this year is more on the focus of insects and their nutrition, and how insect populations will therefore also affect migratory bird populations, their flights, and the success rates and survival, obviously. Migratory birds, first and foremost, I would like to discuss the definition of how would we even describe what they are. Migratory birds are generally described for their movement between breeding grounds and non-breeding grounds, typically breeding throughout the spring, and wintering grounds are for wherever they end up moving afterwards. However, for a lot of species, this can be switched, so you can't exactly buy the definition on that. The reason why they transport from country, a lot of the times from country to country, if not continent to continent, is due to climate and temperature reasons. A lot of the times, winters may be too cold for certain species. Meanwhile, summers may be too hot for certain species. Thus, they keep a change and rotation between countries. And we will be discussing specifically in more detail these rotations. These rotations are specifically called flyways, and these will be discussed later on. But that is the best way that we can describe it. There's also the problem with food availabilities. For plenty of birds that specifically focus on plants and certain types of insects, they cannot eat during the winter due to their these plants or insects, or even sometimes fish, not being available to them. Cannot use it, unfortunately. So yes, the camera, that is. Yes, and obviously there is the problem with weather conditions. Snow and things like this are also not particularly good for plenty of bird species, and vice versa. Hot sun is also not optimal for plenty of them. Many bird species have evolved to adapt to one country and stay there as a resident. However, some decided to evolve in this form of transportation, typically 6,000 kilometers or more for their journey. Speaking of the journey, World Migratory Bird Day is not celebrated on just one day. Appropriately to their flyway times, World Migratory Bird Day is celebrated on 2 times of the year. Specifically, in 2024, it is celebrated on May 11th, and for the autumn migration, it will be celebrated on May 14th. With that being said, it does tend to switch a few years. So, World Migratory Bird Day in general. What does it do, and what is its even purpose for being a thing? First and foremost, I'm going to explain the organization in general. It's an annual global campaign aimed at raising awareness about the need for the conservation of migratory birds and their habitats. It highlights the ecological importance of migratory birds, the threats they face, and the actions that can be taken to protect them. A few key things that they tend to focus on is awareness and education. They'll try and raise awareness for the more controlled or use of pest controls, pollinations, seed dispersals for birds, and indicators for environmental health. Then we have one of their most unique things is that they have a very high focus on global participation, specifically for trying to figure out not trying to figure out, apologies, for showing how they have participants from all around the globe to represent their flyways. And not only are they trying to work with the people themselves, but with the governments and organizations within these countries. Migratory birds do not stay in one country and do not abide by only one country's laws. Therefore, it is extremely important that they have a plethora of protections and help from multiple different governments, countries, and countries in general. It is very important for a global support for there to be a global support for these birds in order to have their journey in a successful manner. Each year, they also do a theme. In the past few years, they've had themes that focused on light pollution, that focused on specifically water birds. And for this year, as I said before, the motto is Protect Insects, Protect Birds. And as a hint for that, it is going to be very heavily focused on insects in particular, arachnids, and so on and so forth. Yes, so overall, World Migratory Bird Day is... World Migratory Bird Day is a vital initiative that brings global attention to the flight of migratory birds and fosters a sense of shared responsibility in preserving these remarkable species and their habitats. Speaking of the species, there's obviously multiple different bird species all across the globe, so I will be more focusing on things that we have here in the red line, specifically the Black Sea Mediterranean flyway. We have the 8 major bird flyways. We have 3 through the Americas, and then for the most of them, they are through Eurasia due to the density of, in general, both species and food supplies, temperatures, and a better form for landing. That you only have really one of these ways going through a part of an ocean without many stops. However, as we go further into this, you will see that there are times when the little birds do decide to cross the ocean. We will get more into that later on. But yes, the focus here will be more on the East Atlantic to the Black Sea Mediterranean flyways, due to the participants here being mostly from these places. Yes, so first we have the white stork. Its breeding ground is during the spring in Europe, and its flyway is to Africa for the winters. The reason why we specifically use the words Europe and Africa for this is because they are very broad terms. White storks are in all kinds of parts of Europe, and vice versa for their wintering grounds. They go to multiple parts of Africa from south to north. Thus, we will just be very vague with this. A few birds are very direct. They'll be going specifically to Zimbabwe sometimes just to Egypt. But in this case, just Africa. Yes, white storks typically have a 49-day or so travel, and their diet consists more or less of small animals and mammals, like rodents, frogs, etc., and a more fish and seagrass type of diet. We have the red-breasted goose. The reason why this one is in here is because it is very cute. Yes. Its wintering ground is by the Black Sea, specifically more near Bulgaria. So here specifically in Cetis, we could have a rare site to perhaps see them is somewhere near November, however, not guaranteed. They are under the vulnerable classification, which obviously isn't something that we want. And this is actually something that we'll get into as well, the classification types. Vulnerable classifications, threatened and near to extinction are 3 classifications that we should pay a lot more attention to, and a big reason why we're going over these. And I will also later on be telling you what you should do in case of seeing one of these and how to help them. Yes, there's also been a few sightings of them in the UK and Ireland, which is a little surprising considering that their flyway is more towards Romania, Ukraine, Bulgaria, and their winters are mostly in Azerbaijan. I hope I pronounced that correctly. So not very close to the UK and Ireland, however, they have been occasionally spotted there. Mostly through confusions, which we will also be getting into. Crakes are one of the more chaotic on this side. Despite their wintering being in the sub-Saharan Africa, their breeding being in Europe and Western China, in 2017, there was a flock of them on Long Island, New York. As I said before, these birds are typically not used to traveling over an entire ocean, typically due to there not being plenty of places to land and feed. With this guy in particular, for some reason, yes, in 2017, they did end up in New York. The specific reason for their flock ending up there wasn't stated. However, a good theory for it is due to specific pollutions that we will be getting into later on. Once again, keep this in mind for later. Yes, and their diet mainly consists of seeds and insects, and we will be seeing a bigger insect theme with specific types of birds whose beaks are more slender and stout in order to grab at the insects better. This is not the best example, but you can eat insects if you've got the determination for it. For example, cuckoos. Their migrations are possibly some of the widest that we have through Europe here, and so you will find them in most places throughout Europe and Africa. And one of their more interesting features is their liking for the hairy caterpillars. The hairy caterpillars are typically known to be toxic. However, the cuckoos have evolved to be able to slice the caterpillars, take the toxic bits out, and then get out the hairy parts as a pellet. They are the perfect hairy caterpillar specialists. So once again, another good reason for these caterpillars to be protected, and once again, we will be getting into it. Keep that in mind for later. We also have the harriers. Their diet mostly consists of larger insects like big beetles and things like that, sometimes even dragonflies, and also smaller reptiles like lizards and other more variations of lizards like skinks, I would say. Their breeding grounds are by the Black Sea in China. Wintering is more towards the southern Africa, and the NT status. NT status refers to near threatened status, meaning that they are not within a red zone. However, they are very slowly minimizing in population numbers. But with that being said, the population hasn't minimized enough for it to be considered a problem, but it's definitely an omen of a problem. So once again, we will be discussing in what ways can we help these birds in these cases. Red shanks are in here because I like their legs. Once again, the VU status is the vulnerable status. Once again, if you see these, be very happy because their numbers are severely dropping already. But with that being said, they are once again very wildly spread throughout continents. For their reason for being wildly spread and also being vulnerable, it goes actually in some cases hand in hand. We will be discussing this more further in detail later on, but for now, as a TLDR, we will be saying that a big reason for this is when you have it in multiple when you have a certain species in multiple countries, certain government and law regulations cannot be universal throughout all of them, unfortunately. And so in a lot of these countries, they can be more easily harmed and hunted. And we will be getting more into migratory bird hunting later on. They are known for being extremely loud. So if you are more near some sort of waters, you may be able to even hear them. And once again, we have a more insect diet. You will now see with the beak, it is a lot longer and thinner, which, as I said before, it is much more convenient for an insect diet. When there's a mix, it is okay to have a bit of a different beak, or when the diet relies on insects, it is better to evolve a beak like this. So that's one way that if you ever see a bird out in the wild and you see its beak, you can somewhat tell its diet through that. And I'm assuming, I think this is, yes, this is the last bird that we will be discussing, which is the most widespread bird on this list. And when I say widespread, I mean it is throughout the entirety of Europe. It is through most of Africa. It is through nearly the entirety of Asia, and through the islands even of Indonesia and Philippines, and as well as on the shores of Australia and New Zealand. And as here I have listed as extant on a few islands. What does the word extant mean? This is not a misspelling of existent. Extant specifically refers for birds that they live in a certain area, which in this case is a few islands closer to Australia and New Zealand, a little further above them. And they exist there, however, they do not breed, and they are just living there. That's why extant is also a very mild term. They might sometimes land there, however, they would not typically survive. It is very unsure how they sometimes end up in these places. So, that being said, as we mentioned the Crakes earlier, who ended up landing in Long Island, New York. Why is that? One of the big reasons for a lot of bird confusion sometimes is light pollution and its effects on migratory birds. I will be pulling up a bit more information for this. Artificial light makes migrating birds lose their way and choose low-quality rest and feeding sites. A lack of unlit roosts nearby prevents shorebirds from using otherwise suitable feeding grounds. Many shorebirds avoid feeding at sites with artificial light. This means that a lot of lights that are specifically, for example, just to light up stadiums or something like that, or even roads. These lights, a lot of the times, could confuse the birds with their feedings, may make them feel unsafe, and would interrupt their rest between their flights. This can obviously cause exhaustions and at times directional confusion. However, also one huge thing with this is collisions. Due to the excessive amounts of light pollution, a lot of birds tend to run in through the mix of the exhaustion and confusion. They tend to run into buildings, skyscrapers, sometimes wind turbines, and many other things included within this. A lot of these things is a huge reason for as in the UN's statistics, it is within the millions of birds that end up dying due to these conditions of light pollution. With that being said, light pollution is unfortunately not our main focus here, but I will still be discussing how you can help the birds affected by this phenomenon later on. So let's get into it. Nutrition and insects. We have, yes, so. Oh, also, another thing that I'd like to mention about light pollution before we move on fully. Insects, since this is the insect theme. Insects are also affected by light pollution's effects. Specifically, same as the birds, it obviously causes exhaustion with interrupted sleep cycles. It also causes increased predation and a disrupted ability to navigate. And this is up to a few of the reasons why up to 1/3 of insects attracted to lights die. A lot of them, yes, a lot of insects, as many of us might already know, and why we, for example, close doors during the evening when lights are still on. A lot of insects are attracted to lights. Attractions to lights may cause them to come closer to predators, make them restless, and things such as this. So once again, we need to protect the insects to protect the birds. If the insects are affected by light pollution, then the birds, in a way, are also affected in this way, even though we also saw more direct ways of how they are affected. Then we will finally move on to the nutrition. As I've stated already before in the panels with our birds, just a few birds that I show that we might be able to see within Europe. A lot of their diets consist mainly of seeds, aquatics, and invertebrates or bugs. And the big reason why is because of fat. Surprisingly, unlike many animals that focus more on a protein-rich diet for maximized movement, migratory birds tend to favor fat sources. And migratory bird fat intake and the distance traveled has been shown to have a direct association with one another. Fat is a critical energy reserve for these birds, as it provides more than twice the energy per gram compared to, for carbohydrates or proteins due to the lighter nature of fat. As a result, birds undergo a period of hyperphagia, or intense eating before migration, significantly increasing their body fat to fuel their long flights. To build up these essential fat reserves, migratory birds consume a diverse diet that includes seeds, berries, fruits, and many of the other things listed there, including even larvae. Each of these food sources contains vital nutrients that aid in the accumulation of fat. For instance, insects and larvae are particularly rich in proteins and fats, providing a dense energy source. Seeds and grains offer carbohydrates, and berries and fruits supply sugars and various vitamins, which, once again, all help with this long travel. Once again, it is oftentimes somewhere in the ballpark of 6,000 kilometers, which they only traverse within about a month, or sometimes a bit more or less. So we can average it to a month flight. So obviously they are in need of some intense nutrition before and throughout the way. And the throughout the way is a very important part of this. And a big reason why a lot of bird conservations will try and help bring these nutrients to the migratory birds the best they can. Birds have evolved also specific physical adaptations to maximize their feeding efficiency. Those that rely heavily on insects have slender bills, which are perfectly suited for capturing and handling small or very fast prey. As I said already before with the beaks. This specialization allows them to efficiently consume the large quantities of insects required to build up their fat stores. And another fun statistic here, it's estimated that birds consume approximately 400 to 500 metric tons of insects per year, which I do not want to think about what in one room 400 to 500 metric tons of insects look like. I am scared of insects. And this massive intake of these insects is not only crucial for their nutritional needs, but also plays a significant role in controlling insect populations. As much as we help for insect conservation, a lot of the times overpopulations are also somewhat of a problem a lot of these times. Thus, we once again, this is the circle of life that helps both of their populations. Insects, which form a substantial part of many migratory birds' diets, are composed mostly of dry matter, protein, and fat. These components are essential for birds as protein supports muscle maintenance, and fat is a very dense energy source. Additionally, insects provide minerals, vitamins, animal protein, and even prebiotic fiber, all of which contribute to the birds' overall health and well-being to sustain these long flights. The high nutritional value of insects makes them an indispensable part of the birds' diet, ensuring they have the necessary energy reserves for their arduous journey. So, in summary for this page, before we skip to the next one, the fat reserves are an extremely important part for the birds, which is also one of their most important nutrients. Even if they do not get the proper proteins or vitamins, the fats is what keeps them going. So now we're going to get into a few more graphs and statistics. Here we have, if you can see in the photo, we have some of the classifications for the, how do we call this? Their vulnerabilities. And are they near extinction or do they not need concern? Here we have in the green part, we have also in the gray part, we have just simply the population of insects that do not have data on them. In the green part, we have the insects that we do not need to particularly worry about and that do not need many conservation efforts here. Near threatened, as I said previously, are those that are somewhat of an omen of a problem, however, not a problem just yet. Here we have around 545 species of insects, at least as shown in the graph. And obviously in this threatened zone, we have vulnerable, endangered, and critically endangered. Apologies if I had those incorrectly previously. Yes, so you will see these endangerment labels not only for birds or insects, but for most species and even plant species in general. This is actually a really interesting thing that you can find on, if you are ever researching any sort of nature preserved, any sort of nature species, whether it be animals, plants, arachnids, fish, whatever your heart desires. If you have a specific species in mind, you may go to even the Wikipedia articles, and you can see their classifications here. In the black zone, we have the extinct insect populations. However, and a fun thing with, not fun, the fun thing with the species extinctions is that in the last 150 years, we've lost about 5 to 15% of all species that we had. Thus, we are now currently left with around 85 to 95 of the current species, which doesn't feel like a lot until you realize just how prominent many of them are and in what high densities of populations they can be, which is once again I would say a little more than 400 to 500 metric tons of insects. That is a terrifying image. So yes, we have two categories of insects that we can say here. We have the terrestrial insects, and we have the water insects, water-dwelling insects. These two are very specific categories when we're talking about conservation, because water-dwelling insects are in fact growing and thriving in population. Meanwhile, terrestrial insects have a decline of 9% per year, which, you know, do the math on that one, and you start to realize that with 9% per year, if there isn't action taken soon or immediately, this can cause quite a worry for the birds that don't particularly nest by the shores. And as you can see here, so in the graph, we have a mix of the water-dwelling and terrestrial insects. However, when we're talking just about the terrestrial insects, 1/3 of all of their species are endangered. So once again, endangered isn't the vulnerable, endangered and critically endangered categories. So yes, with that, we shall move on to then the solutions. How can we help these insects in particular? Whether they are in the least concern category or the critically endangered, they can all be helped in more or less the same ways. Conserving insects is crucial for maintaining balanced ecosystems, supporting the biodiversity, and ensuring the health of migratory bird populations. One effective way to help conserve insects is by creating small habitats in your gardens or parks, by planting native plants, providing water sources, and creating sheltered areas with logs, rocks, and even leaf litter. Whatever leaves you rake up during the autumn, they love those, because these can offer insects the food, water, and shelter they need to thrive. These small habitats can serve as vital refuges, especially in urban areas where natural habitats are often scarce. For those who don't know, urban is the definition for something that is more within a city, in a city setting, rather than more towards villages and farmlands. Another way we can help them is by lowering light pollution. As stated before, is another lowering light pollution is another important step in conserving these insects. Many insects, including moths and other nocturnal species, are attracted to artificial lights, like light bulbs, street lights, which can disrupt their natural behaviors and lead to higher mortality rates. Reducing the use of outdoor lighting, using motion-censored lights, and choosing lights with a lower color temperature minimize the negative impact on insect populations. Another thing we can do is support companies that avoid using pesticides. Pesticides can have devastating effects on insects, often killing non-target species and disrupting food chains. By choosing organic products or supporting businesses that promote sustainable farming practices, you can help reduce the widespread use of harmful chemicals. Additionally, allowing your garden to grow naturally without any excessive trimming or pesticide use can create a safer environment for insects to flourish in general. Engaging in and supporting wildlife protection efforts and conservation causes is vital for broader scale insect conservation. Donating to or volunteering with organizations dedicated to preserving natural habitats and promoting biodiversity helps protect insects on a much larger scale. Supporting conservation education can also raise awareness about the importance of insects and the need to protect them, inspiring more people to take action. And what's even better than just supporting and promoting education is to actually try and not only educate yourself, but the ones around you. Supporting the expansion of protected areas is another key strategy. Preserving large tracts of land where insects and other wildlife thrive without human interference is crucial for their survival. protected areas that encompass multiple species and diverse habitats ensure that various insect species, along with other flora and fauna, have a chance to coexist and flourish. Monitoring your local environment or reporting on the species, you can contribute to citizen science projects and help track the health of insect populations. And this is actually another thing. There are a few websites, for even here for CETES, that help with monitoring local bird species that have been seen around here, which can help with understanding flyway and migration informations. And there are also plenty of these similar kinds of websites for insects. And in fact, for many kinds of animal types, we'll say. So if you ever see any sort of even plants, birds, insects, animals, fish that you think, oh, I didn't know this was in this area, you can feel free to snap a photo and send it out to these websites and organizations, because this is very crucial data that a lot of them work hard to try and find and put all together. This data is invaluable for researchers and conservationists working to understand trends and threats to insect biodiversity. By keeping an eye on your surroundings and sharing your findings, you can play an active role in the conservation of these creatures. So yes, in summary, there are numerous ways to support the conservation of insects, from making small changes in your garden to supporting larger conservation efforts. For each action, no matter how small, contributes to creating a safer or more sustainable environment for insects, and ultimately benefiting not only the migratory birds, not only the birds in general, but entire ecosystems. Because the insects aren't here just for the birds. They are here to help with farmlands and fauna, to help with plants and other kinds of animals who have a mostly insect diet. And yes, then we are coming to the end. Thank you for joining in, and I would like to say, as just a TLDR for everything that we discussed in the last 40 or so minutes, is that it is good if you can pay attention to your consumptions where you can. Turn off unnecessary lighting or exchange it for motion censored lights. Help your local habitats or conservation efforts. And expand your knowledge. As I said, education is very important for these kinds of causes, not only for the help of, not only for supporting the education, but to become educated yourself. And with that, we are officially finished. Thank you so much for joining in, and I will be, in case you were not able to tune in, I hope that there is a recording for all of this that will hopefully be available for posting. Once again, thank you so much, and I will see you for the next campaign. If you are just here for the migratory birds, maybe we will see, Praxis will see you in October. And then, until then, thank you so much for joining in.